We are back. Welcome to Phoenix Plays a Game. I am Phoenix. I am a chess expert, a risk expert, hoping to get better at both. We are in the middle of my longest run ever of chess.com survival puzzle rush. The puzzles are getting incredibly hard now. They're at, 3,300, I think, is where we are. We already solved a 3315. I say we just dig into this one. Now, I got a glance at this one prior to the end of the last video. Anytime I solve one, it shows me the next one, and then I usually will call it quits. But I had already noted that this is 3 pawns against a single rook. So black has to queen a pawn here. Step 0, if you've been following along, is count the material. Well, we know we're queening a pawn. And then step 1 is find the targets. Well, there aren't going to be any in this position because we aren't in a position to win the rook. So these pawns are going to go this way, right? Now, one thing I'd like to show you about these sorts of positions in general is something that I learned when I was about 17 years old. A master was teaching me some endgames. We were just hanging out at the chess club, and he decided to show me some things about pawns versus a rook. And what he told me back then was that 2 pawns on the 6th beat a rook, provided there's no single move tricks, like you just lose a pawn immediately, or you get a forked, or you're getting checkmated somewhere else, something like that. But 2 pawns on the 6th can basically force themselves to become a queen and beat the rook. Why? Well, if 2 pawns are on the 6th, let's say here and here, and white puts a rook behind one of them, you just push the other one, and that one is going to threaten to queen. So let's say that rook goes and guards that pawn. Well, then the other one goes up the board. And yes, one of these two will be taken, but the other one will queen because there's 2 different threats to queen. So the white rook would take it and the other one would queen. So I can pretty much tell that this pawn or this pawn is going to queen. And just from instinct and knowing these sorts of puzzles, I'm thinking it's going to change according to whichever move white decides to defend with. So I'm going to guess white has enough power to stop one, but not both. Okay, so that's the first thing I note. The second thing I note is that this king is suspiciously close to this black pawn, and I note what is called the Reti device, named after Richard Reti, R-E-T-I, Hungarian master from I think the 1920s. And he's famous for having a puzzle where a king from behind a pawn is able to make threats on its way up the board to finally get into the square of this pawn. I think you can look up the Reti puzzle, and the king starts here and goes like this, attempting to catch one pawn, but then suddenly goes the other way and defends its own pawn going up the board. So that's the famous Reti device used in many puzzles. And finally, the Venkura position is something else I recognize. It's not exactly this, but it has to do with a rook, a king, and a pawn that is a rook pawn threatening the queen. And the essential idea is that the white rook will attack a king, always threatening to get behind the passed pawn and then capture it. So anytime this king touches that pawn, the white rook has to check it away. And what ends up happening is the king has no files to run or hide from, except in front of its rook pawn. But if it's in front of its rook pawn, the rook pawn can't go forward. And it's trapped there. So then I'm wondering, actually, I'm just talking about this, I'm putting this together, thinking, what if this rook somehow were checking the king, and this black king went in, and then this white king was able to come up the board and threaten this pawn kind of, but then come over here and it's like a checkmate or or something like that. So I don't know. Now, I haven't actually looked at any moves of this puzzle. I just wanted to brain dump all the different types of threats that I am aware of in this kind of position. So I'm thinking there's only 2 logical first moves, and that's one is push this pawn and the other is push this pawn. So Phoenix's rule says always be calculating, right? Let me go quiet down the other room over there very quick. I'll be right back. Always fun to jump on a video and then suddenly a marching band decides to appear in the room next to you. Okay, so we're fully soundproofed. fully hydrated, so we can finally get to the calculations. Okay, I was saying that it's one of these two moves. I like both of them, but because this is a puzzle, I'm not allowed to allow a transposition, meaning I can't just like push one, then no matter what, push the other. Because otherwise I could have pushed this one first and then pushed that one. And puzzles don't have two solutions. So that's like a big hint. Um, Speaking of liking both moves, why don't you, while I'm thinking, go down and like the video if you like these kinds of end games. We have, and even if you don't like the video anyway, every time you do, we get about 10, 15 more views and our community grows. And who doesn't want that? So, how about we start with this guy? All right, back to the old master when I was a teenager, teaching me to get pawns on the sixth. So, I guess I'm going to threaten to do that. By the way, the reason I'm not like keen on this idea right now is the king is too far away to allow it to queen. So, I'm not actually threatening a queen. Like if I just played this right now, which is, I think it's H2. And then, yeah, because we're black. So this is the H file. So H2. If I'm threatening to do that, it's like, cool, it looks like I'm queening, but no, I'm not because there's a white rook looking at it. So then my next move would have to be this. And then I could queen and I could win the rook, but maybe that's not enough because that's a lot of moves. So anyway, let's try this first. And if I go there, then probably the white rook wants to get behind it. So king c2, and I push, I guess, go behind it, push, it takes it, I push, and then I'm threatening the queen. Oh, that doesn't work at all. Okay, take, because they can take it. Now, like white, in a real game, you want to see if white can win here, but in the puzzle, we don't have to do that. We can just see if white has to draw. So actually, that doesn't work because white is free to just give up the rook for the pawn no matter what. Forget about like all the nuances of like tempi and things like that. Just he'll take the pawn right away, then take my other pawn, and then I have to draw because there's only kings left. So again, that would be c4, king f6, I guess c3. Sorry, c3. Didn't mean to draw that. Rook c7, c2. Rook takes it. Push this pawn. h2. Rook takes it. King has to take the rook or else be down the rook, and then this pawn dies. That's a draw. So let's try something else for black. Let's see if we can get black to win now. So you want to go back to the last move and see if you could have done something differently. So that would be push, king, push, rook, and then push, and we lose it, which seems silly. And now, do we have anything else we can do other than push the H pawn, which we know draws immediately? And I don't see one. I guess push this pawn up, but then white takes it. So both pawn pushes don't work, and I don't see any point in moving a king to any of these squares because it's just hurting the power of this anyway. Yeah, and in fact, I would just go here, threaten to take the pawn, and then take this pawn. So, okay, so that's a draw. So we don't like that. So let's try that again. Push, king, and then not push this pawn up. Actually, let's push it one more time. Rook, not pushing that pawn. Let's push the other rook. Okay, that's better because now we're threatening the queen. Take check. And then this doesn't look good for black. Oh, okay. All right. So that was the Venkura position that I was talking about earlier. If you notice, in that position, okay, a pawn is here, the king is here in check, and what's happening is the white rook is asking to be allowed onto the H file. So anything like king over, then the rook gets behind it. Now, in the real Venkura position, black has a rook as well, but the white king is better placed, and the white king is placed over here. But that's slightly different. But that we're just trying to draw as white, not win. So what ends up happening is, okay, this pawn is dead. It died right here, and I used its sacrifice to help me get the pawn up to the next rank, but I'm in check. So if I go, I have to defend the square behind the pawn. So let's go up, but then check, and then I have to defend this pawn. So here, or here doesn't matter. I think it's either going to be check or check again. And in fact, on king h1, white doesn't even have because the pawn is blocked, like I said earlier, white can actually just take this pawn. So let me show you that line again, just to prove the point. Here, 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 here. Oh, you moved away from the queening square? I threatened a queen. Okay, I take the pawn with check. And this is one of those exceptions to the 2 pawns on the 6th. Is one of them is dying right away with check. So that's check. King here, check again. King in the corner, and then the king, white king takes this pawn. That is probably actually a loss, right? Can white win that? It doesn't matter. It's a draw. We're not going to waste our time figuring out. I'll do that on my own time when I'm studying. I'm not sure. Does a rook have to give itself up for that pawn? I think it's still a win for white, actually. I think he'll get enough time to come up the board and eat that pawn. So, right? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Okay. Push here. Push here. We already said this doesn't work, so let's make it red, I guess. And this doesn't work. So what else is there? Looks like I wasted a lot of time. I invested 2 tempi in a pawn that is about to die. So I'm starting to feel like that's the wrong answer. So there's another position, actually, that just occurs to me. It's called the Luceno with a rook pawn. And it's similar to this, but the idea is that, I might have actually already said it, but Luceno with a rook pawn is that the king gets stuck in front of the pawn, and then we have this, oh, I did already say this. The rook is cutting off the squares right here. So I'm thinking, what if we push this pawn and instead of guarding the queening square, because it's not actually threatening the queen, the rook just goes like this and attacks a pawn. Okay, because then I think if we push the other pawn, the rook takes it check. And then if it has to go here, then that's not really, we can just go eat the other pawn. Yeah, because the black king is blocking. So this doesn't work. And I'm not seeing anything of how to make this work, because I just don't see any other moves. Both pawn moves don't work. And by the way, the reason I think that it would be king this direction is because white wants to take away the opportunity to push the black pawn, and the white king needs to kill this black pawn and then come over and kill the other pawns. I'm pretty bad at drawing arrows, I guess. Okay, so this doesn't seem to work because king c2, and then rook behind it, and it doesn't matter what happens next. So let me try that again. Here, here, here. And this cannot, okay, I just don't think this can be right. Forget about the chess for a second. If this, and this, it looks like we just transposed to what I just said earlier, right? Because can I just go here, here, here? And it's the same thing. And we know puzzles don't have 2 solutions. So I think because because puzzles don't have 2 solutions, and I don't think I can push this pawn because king c2 and push, and then here. What if we went like this, and then king c2, and apparently I can't push this pawn, right? So do I just go like king up? Okay, king up, sure. Here I queen, check, and it's fine. I have a queen, I'm fine. So not rook behind the pawn. King eats this pawn. Let me take that from the top since the arrows may be confusing. Push, king, 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 queen, rook takes, king takes. Here, uh-oh, I'm outside the square of the pawn. The black king is outside the square of this pawn, and the white king just stopped that pawn, and it doesn't matter that I won the rook. Okay, here. What's the defense for white? I guess that is the defense. Here, here, take. So that's a draw. But I don't have to push that pawn yet. I can go here. That's it. It's here, if king up, threatening to queen, and then if he eats my pawn, I don't have to queen right now and allow him to come back in. This is the ready device. This is the ready device from earlier. I actually have to push the pawn to shrink the box. I don't have to queen right now. The rook is busy. My black king is busy. We're okay with that. I think. Here. Here. And then if you eat my pawn, I push. And then if you go like this, I push again, of course. So what happens then if you go rook behind it, I queen. So your king isn't enough and the queen and the rook is not enough. I think we have our answer. I'm happy with this. I mean, we already proved that this doesn't work. I don't see how what that even does. And this looks like it's good because it actually nails down the rook. It doesn't do it right away, but it nails down the rook to this queening square. Now white has to, this is such a good fundamental endgame theorem, or I guess rule of thumb or something, is that you want the other side to have to decide to spend tempi on one side of the board or the other. And wherever they invest, you figure out if you want to counter them or if you want to invest where they aren't going. So like, for instance, if just in general, if the white king is going like this direction, we spend all our time doing this. But if the white king goes this way, then we just spend all our time doing this. And eventually we will overwhelm white because I think we're asking the white king which way to go. Do you want to use your rook to stop this guy, or do you want to try to use your king to stop this guy and this guy? So I think it's actually going to be pawn up, and I think I'm happy with this. And I think we have the first move. It's the question of how does white defend? Excellent. Oh, okay. So if the rook goes like this, I'm surprised it actually kind of didn't go like that. Oh, well, that's automatically queening. Okay. Well, we figured this out a while ago, right? I push up and they do it again and I push up again and it wins. Yeah, I was pretty sure because remember from earlier we were talking about the Luciano with a rook pawn. We don't want to be in check and we don't want the rook to check us and we don't want to have to like get in front of our pawn or like this. We don't want to be stuck in front of our pawn because then the white king has all the time in the world to hunt us down. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be here. And then the white rook cannot. They'd have to go up again and we push again. And if they take our pawn, that's fine. We queen and we're fine. And in fact, even in that position, if they check us, we can actually give away the queen, blocking the check. So I'm pretty sure I go pawn up. That was actually the easiest of solutions. I don't know why they didn't try king in. Maybe we'll take a look at it. And so let's go ahead and play pawn up. Is this going to be the end of the puzzle? I doubt it. I think we're going to see here, 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 and that's the end of the puzzle. I'm guessing. Okay, I think it's this, but I'm going to take a sec to make sure because this is if I get this right, it's a personal best of 63 puzzles. I feel like I have it, and I'm pretty excited to play it, but I'm nervous too. So I'm going to think about this, and you're going to go hit the like button. Okay, I'm pretty sure that's going to be it because here, here, here works just fine. I basically guaranteed that. And if here, here, I think I can still actually go pawn up because I don't see any way to do anything. I mean, the king is shielded in both directions because notice the pawn covers the square. And if you give away your rook, I just take it. Oh, that's the idea, right? Push the pawn, king over, or even like rook takes, king over, and then it's outside the square of both pawns. So actually either of them. So there's no, I have to push the pawn in order so that the king can't try to like stay inside the square of both pawns. Pretty sure I have to do that. I'm excited. I'm nervous. I don't know if this is right, but I feel like there's no other option, right? I can't go like this. Can I? No, because check. Right. Yeah. Okay. I can't allow myself to be checked because then I have to maintain control of this square and things like that. I think. Pretty sure. Oh boy. Let me check. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this looks good. I mean, if rook check, if let's say I push this pawn, if rook check, then I have to like go away and then it comes back and tries to attack my pawn. So then I got to come back and then it just goes and checks me again. And then I have to like go back here and then it comes and checks me, checks the pawn again. And the king has to come in like that. and then it's just back and forth, check, 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 or attack the pawn. And I don't think there's any point where I can allow white to take my pawn. For example, if king goes here and it goes behind the pawn and I push again, it takes it check, and then everything's dead. This is dead, and then it'll never allow the pawn to cross this rank. So I'm pretty sure it's not pushing this pawn and it's not pushing this pawn. So, and I can't allow myself to get checked. So we're gonna push the pawn. That's right. Now I'm pretty sure I push the pawn again. Oh man, I want to blitz this out, but I owe it to myself to do it slow. But this has got to be it. I think this is going to be my personal record. My heart's pounding, actually. Yeah, wow. A push, right? What else could it be? What else could it be? Oh, God. Is it king up? Why do I have to hurry? Why can't I go boom, boom, king up? They eat it here. Rook takes, king takes. They're in the square. Darn it, they're drawing again. Gosh. Okay, I guess this puzzle's getting kind of long, but I want to do this live here. But I don't want this king to use that ready device and get into the square of this pawn. Oh God, what pawn do I push? Or is it king? Okay. Focus. Pawn. King. And then king up. Takes my pawn. Queen. I don't have to queen. I forgot about that from earlier. I don't have to queen. Pawn. King can't go here. My own king is there. No, I do have to queen. Once this pawn is dead, they can just take. And then this king will go in and eat the other pawn. Pawn. King. Pawn. I have to leave the pawn there. There is no throwing yourself away, right? Oh, wait. Pawn, king. Pawn here. I just take the pawn. Check. Not check, actually. Take. Take. Here. It's outside the square. The king is outside the square of this pawn. Can't get back in. I'm going to have to watch this back and see if I hallucinated something. Here. King. No. Pawn. If rook goes behind at queen. If rook takes the pawn, I don't care. Pawn. King. Pawn. Rook doesn't work. Rook behind the pawn doesn't work for white. It works for black. Rook here doesn't work. I take it. Or take it. And that's fine. And if rook goes here, I take that. White can't deal with both pawns on these two squares at the same time because this is one of my fun things. They're actually outside of each other's squares. Right? See how the two pawns are outside of each other's squares? The king can't be on both of them. Oh, it is pawn push, isn't it? It has to be. The only thing I'm worried about kind of is if I push the pawn and the king goes up, then all of a sudden the rook is allowed behind this pawn, and I'm worried I'm missing a defense that I don't see. But if I push this pawn, take. No. If I push this pawn, oh gosh, do I have to push this pawn now so that the white king can't get into the square? I'm like frustrated. I'm kind of frustrated and scared here. All right, I gotta like take a sec to really think about this calmly. Oh man, I was just about to turn this back on and explain why I can't tell the difference between pushing this pawn first, then this one, or pushing this one now and then this one. And I think I figured out what it is. If I push this pawn, the king takes, and I said, oh, well, I just push here. And now the rook can't guard both pawns, right? But I think that it could if I went here and then like I might queen, but then it takes this pawn check and it has to go backward. I'm wondering if that, man, no, I was hallucinating. I got real excited there. Push, take, push again. The king can't catch either pawn, so the rook is responsible for both of them. So here, what I was going to say is that it's rook check. King has to go backward on account of the king blocking it off, and then take this pawn check and then sacrifice it for the other one. So here, 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 and if there, then it goes check and check. But the problem is I'm not going to push here. I'm going to queen the pawn as soon as that rook leaves. So if I go here and the king takes, I can push this other pawn, and there's never an opportunity for this rook to leave. Never an opportunity. So, like, take. Sorry, your king is outside the square. You don't win. So that should be winning. Let me say that again. This wins for black. So here, and then what if here, trying to catch up to the pawn. Then I think I push again, and that should be a win. All right, so this feels like a win, but so does this, and I don't know why. My instinct was to push this pawn, and I'm wondering if I'm like talking myself out of it. And then their final option, of course, is king up, threatening to queen. Oh no, we can't. King up, we already said why this doesn't work. Take, take, take. So pawn up might work, but also this should work too. So what's the problem with that? King, then here, and then here. And then I'm going to keep walking this pawn until somebody tells me I can't. Here, 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 here. King up. Why is this? All right, I guess I got to think about it again. I don't know. Okay, folks, I actually have been so frustrated by this. I have been thinking about it for like a half an hour or something. And it got to the point where I had to do other things. So I actually pulled out a physical chessboard, and I set up this position, and I still pulling my hair out. As far as I know, that is a perfectly legal thing to do, because that's how people used to do it back before the internet. They would send pictures of a puzzle to other people, and then they would set it up on their board and try to solve it. And that's the way puzzle competitions work. So I don't feel guilty about using an outside device, especially since, we've got all kinds of arrows and stuff to draw. So it feels to me like the same kind of thing. So here's my issue. I'm pretty sure that if I push the pawn, king goes up, I can push this pawn. Whereas if I push this pawn, king can still go up, and then I push that pawn, and it's the same position. So I'm like, if I push the pawn, c4, king takes, c6, rook behind the pawn, I queen, they take my pawn, check, I just go here, they check again, I go here. And that's a win. So c4 is a win because I queen, and I can't figure out a way to stop me. So if I go g4, and then the king goes up, it's the same thing. Pawn, rook, queen, eats my pawn. I still have a pawn here. And I'm like, this is still a win. So both of them are a win. And that's what's really frustrating. So I can't figure out a defense. So the only thing I can think of is, do I want to preserve a pawn, or do I want to push the passer at a time when the rook cannot come across yet? And I think I want to push this pawn because I'm worried there's some sort of like queen versus rook thing. So I have not figured this out. And I'm hoping that I'm right, that it's save the pawn. And that's the best I got. And I think it's like, I also looked at a tons of things where like king here, and then like rook up. I looked at this too, but then I think I can just push the pawn anyway, and then they take the pawn, and I move, and then I queen the pawn anyway. Or they have to take this pawn, and I queen. And I'm like, that's the same position. So I figure pawn up, king over, pawn, rook. I can probably, yeah, just play like this. And I don't see, the pawn is still dead, and I just can't see the difference here. I just don't know what the difference is. So I guess it would be take, and the king goes here, and then you get behind the pawn, but then I queen. So you don't get behind the pawn, so you check again, and I can't get out of checks. No, because I just go like this or something, and then you get behind the pawn again, and I push, and it's a queen again. So both of these appear winning, and I'm done with it, man. I've done like probably 40 minutes of calculation. And 62, I tied my record. This is the 33 puzzle. I'm beginning to wonder if this is a broken puzzle. And like the computer thinks, oh, this is a draw. And then if you let it think for 5 minutes, it's like, actually, this is a win. And so I don't know. So I'm just going to push this pawn and I'm going to pray that I'm right. It sucks to end the run this way, but to be honest with you, this is beyond my capability. It looks like this is a win. I showed you why. It looks like this is a win. I showed you why. I think they transpose. Here we go. This was my gut. That's why I chose this one, because this was my gut answer. Am I right? Is this my record? That sucks. I know it says average time 3 hours per puzzle. That's because obviously I just let it go with, went to bed or something, but it really sucks. I thought I had it. I guess we get to look at the engine. Damn. I mean, this is going to be a good learning opportunity for me. I don't understand why I have to push that pawn right now. How is this a draw? Is it just that I can't get out of checks? So, all right. So the best engine line is give up the pawn. And then, yes, I push the pawn as we said. Rook c6. I queen. They take my pawn and I go like this. We know that. c4 is a win. But why is this? How is this a draw? c4. Rook h4. Yeah, we looked at this. c3. So what? Why is this a draw? Yeah, I know that. Oh, no. That's what I missed. Rook f1. I didn't see this at all. I thought it was going to be perpetual checks or get behind the pawns. I thought it was going to be rook here, rook here. This is amazing. It holds both of these. Because obviously if I queen, they just take it. And then they give up the rook for the other pawn at some point. But here, check. I'm losing the pawn. I should have seen that. The other line was so forcing. Why didn't I play it? I saw it won. It was so straightforward. I saw that it won and I didn't play it. And I went with my gut move because I didn't see why that one lost either. That's a shame. I got to start all over. I mean, I didn't deserve to get this one right. I didn't know it. And we got halfway there. We got the first couple moves right. And we did some really good analysis. We learned some things about this. And now I understand that the technique is to come up the board, skewer the king, get to the back rank, and then that's how you hold the pawns. Because if the king ever tries to help, you just work. And anything else, you just like mark time, right? You don't even have to take the pawn. You can just like, there's nothing to be done here. Oh, that worked. That loses actually. So don't get too fancy. Stay between the pawns. But wow. I guess this is apparently still a draw anyway. Yeah. Check. I'll take your pawn next move. Wow. Okay. It sucks that I got that one wrong. It's awesome that I got 62. And I still had a lot of fun on this run. I hope you had fun. I hope you subscribe to the channel. I hope you join me for the next one. And I hope you get better at chess. I hope that I taught you something. I know I got better at chess, so I had fun. I hope you had fun, and I guess I'll see you for the next one.